In 8th grade, my middle school was forming an intramural basketball league. I loved playing basketball, so I decided to try out for one of the teams so I could show off my mad skills. That's with a Z at the end. Well, on the day of the draft, we entered the school auditorium, and there had to have been at least 100 young people in that room. And the draft began, and I waited for my name to be called. And I waited and waited. To this day, I'm still waiting for my name to be called. Sadly, I was the last one selected. I didn't even know the guy who picked me. He wasn't in any of my classes. I didn't know the name of the team. It was a bad day. I didn't even try to find out what team I was on. I told myself, what's the point in even trying? It wasn't until the last week of the school where after school we were all playing some pickup ball and happened to be on a good team at the end. One of the guys said, that was really good playing. And I said, yeah. And we introduced one another, and I found out he was the guy who selected me. Who would have known? We would have got along just fine. But on that particular day, I felt so rejected. The last one picked. The last one. Rejection isn't easy. Rejection causes a lot of emotional pain. It can damage our mood and self-esteem. And it is a pain that can stay with you for a very long time. I bet we all have at least one story where we have experienced rejection, where our sense of belonging has been destroyed. Or we know of a loved one who has experienced significant rejection. Maybe someone has gotten fired from a job. Someone has fallen under the influence of drugs and has lost loved ones. A family member gets thrown out of the family over political disagreements. A couple divorces. A church member leaves because they think the church is too liberal or conservative. A teenager reveals to their parents that they identify as LGBTQIA+. A teenager reveals she is pregnant. A person is shunned because they do not speak English. Or a rabbi who is teaching too radical a message. A rabbi, or as I like to call him, Jesus. Even Jesus felt the sting of rejection. In his hometown, no less. Instead of a hero's welcome, Jesus is treated like a guest who has worn out his welcome. The people question his authority, his wisdom, his ability. They can't believe that the Jesus they knew when he was young has become this fantastic, yet in their opinion, bombastic teacher. It gets so bad for Jesus that he could do no deed of power there due to the level of unbelief. Sadly, Jesus is used to this. This is the fourth rejection since Jesus called the 12 disciples back at the beginning of Mark chapter 3. Chapter 3, verse 20, a crowd gathers and his family says, Jesus is out of his mind. Just a few verses later, legal experts claim he is from Beelzebul. And then in chapter 5, people on the other side of the lake plead with Jesus, leave. To this day, rejection is alive and well in our world. It is hard, it is vicious, and it leaves scars. So how do we deal with rejection? Now notice, I did not say get over, because I don't think we ever get over rejection. My wife Kristen and I finished season 3 of The Bear last night. And the main character, Carmi, is still dealing with a traumatic experience he had while training under a very good, yet very mentally and abusive chef. Now, try as we might, we cannot delete rejection from our memory, and we cannot erase it from our souls. But we can learn how to move away from rejection. And our teacher is Jesus. Notice what Jesus does after he is rejected by his hometown. When Jesus gets knocked down, and I mean that metaphorically, he gets up. And he even takes time to heal a few sick people on his way out of town. Jesus still shows grace. So when faced with rejection, Jesus rejects the rejection. Jesus rejects the rejection, which is just Jesus being Jesus, God being God. It is how God deals with being rejected. Let me bring in the lesson from Ezekiel. God calls Ezekiel to go and preach. God says, I'm sending you to the people of Israel, to a nation of rebels who have rebelled against me. They and their ancestors have transgressed against me to this very day. The descendants are impudent and stubborn. In other words, God is saying, the people have rejected me, but I am not giving up on them. Ezekiel, I am sending you to them. God sends Ezekiel to these same people, because God rejects the rejection, and God still shows grace. God shows this grace by giving Ezekiel the authority to speak and invite the people to renew their relationship with God. Jesus does the same in the gospel. He gives his authority, the question by his hometown, and he gives this authority to his disciples and sends them out to the villages to spread the good news and to bring people to God. And you know what's amazing? Do you know what's really amazing? Even though his hometown rejects him, Jesus still goes and dies for them. Jesus still goes and dies for the very people who reject him. God's last word is not a no, but a yes. When we experience rejection, when we hear people tell us no, when we hear the world tell us no, God says yes. I want to share with you a story from the youth gathering in Houston from 2018. How many of you have ever been to a youth gathering? We were getting ready to listen to Nadia Bolz-Weber speak, and the room had these loaves of bread available, and one of our youth, Anna Haskins, begged me to get some bread for her. So I did, and I got a 12-inch piece of bread for her. And when I gave it to her, she said, "Is this all?" Now, being a pastor, what I should have said was, "We only get one loaf, child." But what I did say after a week in Houston, very humid, "I'm sorry, do I look like Jesus? Can I turn this loaf into feeding of 5,000? So maybe there was a little regret there how I answered. But we passed it around, and 12 people had some very good bread. But then I heard we could get some more. So because Anna is one of my peeps, I got her more bread. And more bread. And finally, I was able to procure this, and I call this the Godzilla bread. Now, by this time, she was running away from me. You know, what better memory for a young Lutheran than being chased down a hallway by her pastor yelling, "Anna, you forgot your bread! You forgot your bread!" Now, here's where it gets cool. Anna started carrying this loaf of bread. Well, not this particular loaf of bread. That would be disturbing because that's, 6 years ago. But Anna started carrying around the loaf of bread around the gathering that afternoon. And then these other kids would stare at Anna and this loaf of bread, and they would go, "I like bread." And Anna would gladly give them a piece. And she gave, and she gave. So the bread fed more people. No one was denied the bread. All were fed, all were filled. I kept thinking about that story when it came to God this morning. Even when rejected, God still offers bread. This bread comes in the form of repentance and grace, and God offers it to everyone. And God offers it to us today in the sacrament that we call Holy Communion. Whenever we experience rejection, God gives us the bread to reassure us that rejection does not have the last word in our lives. God does. And just like Jesus sent the disciples, and Jesus sent Anna to share the bread, Jesus sends us to share the bread. And the bread we share is the bread of acceptance and welcome and understanding. So if someone has been rejected because they are unemployed, homeless, battling addiction, liberal, conservative, divorced, single, LGBTQIA+, a single parent, someone whose first language is not English. They know, they see, they feel, they believe that when they come here to St. Paul's, they will not be shown the door. They will be given the bread. And it will be like if God held a draft to form a team. They will not be picked last. They will be picked next. Amen.